Hey, welcome everybody. Let's talk real estate. Your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California. As we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving this market today to find the best solutions going forward. With our man right in the middle, it's Barry Saywitz. Hey, Barry.
Hey, good morning, Paul, and good morning to all of our viewers and our listeners out there. It is Tuesday. We are back. I am Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company, managing partner of Saywitz Properties, and we are here to talk a little bit of real estate. And so I'm excited about today's show. Number one, it's a beautiful sunny morning here in Southern California. No humidity, relatively speaking, no bugs. For those of you in other parts of the country where it's very hot and humid, I'm sorry. But we pay more for gas here, so there you go. Regardless, I am excited about today's show. We are on part 4 of a 5-part series that we are doing in tying in the legal aspects of real estate. And we're going to talk about some different stuff than we've talked about before. And I'm excited to have our guest with us, Andrew Kirsch of the law firm of SKLAR Kirsch in Los Angeles. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Barry. You talk about humidity and bugs. I just had a 10-day trip to South Carolina and talk about hot heat and humidity, but it was fun.
Yeah, and it's tough if you're, look, if you're from a place without humidity and you go to humidity, your pores do not really adjust and you just immediately start sweating down to your socks and everything. And so once you're there a few days, you start to acclimate. But if you're not there that long or the first few days that you're there, it's toughy.
Or if you have kids that are 9 and 7 years old and they can't acclimate at all.
Yes, and then you have the bugs, and then you need some calamine lotion or some Afterbite because people get bit. That's how it goes. So, well,
Exactly.
Welcome back. So I appreciate you coming on the show. I want to go back to the beginning or close to the beginning. You're originally from Los Angeles in Southern California. Decide to go to school at Northwestern in the great city of Chicago, where I'm from originally.
Oh.
First of all, what made you decide to go there other than Northwestern's a great school? And then why and how did you get into thinking about studying law?
Yeah, great question. So, grew up in LA. In fact, I'm sitting here in Century City, and the high school that I went to is literally 1 block away from me, Beverly Hills High School. Northwestern is a great school. Chicago's just a wonderful city. But I had the fortune to play Division I, Big Ten college baseball. And so in selecting a university that I wanted to attend, I wanted to be able to go to a top academic university and also play high-end college athletics, and baseball is my sport. So I was able to do that. And then I love the city so much, I stayed there for law school. The law school is in downtown Chicago. The undergrad is in Evanston, which is about 30 miles apart. So it was 2 different experiences. And then after I graduated law school, I came back to LA. Now, you asked a question as to why did I get into law school? Why did I want to be a lawyer? Well, some people who know me well know that I have a bit of fanaticism with respect to Tom Cruise movies. My son's name is Maverick, Top Gun. But a movie that really stuck to me in the early 90s was A Few Good Men. And he was a lawyer in the Navy, and just the courtroom scenes were just so iconic and so inspiring for me to want to be a lawyer. Now, the irony is that I am not a litigator. I started out as a litigator the first couple of years of practice at Latham & Watkins, which is a large global law firm. I was a litigator, and then I saw the light and became a transactional real estate lawyer, and I've been one ever since.
Gotcha. It's funny because people who know me would, I think, attribute me more to the Risky Business Tom Cruise movie because I like throwing parties and messing up my house. But Tom Cruise movie's good all the way around for sure, and I'm glad that it carried over to your personal life and then also you carried on to the next generation. And so you're in LA, you make the transition into the real estate side of things. And then at some point you decide to go out on your own. What was the epiphany in terms of wanting to or deciding to do that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So this was coming out of the GFC, and the clients of mine that I had established at two large law firms, Latham and Watkins and Goodwin Proctor. Times were tough. Well, times are tough now, but times were really tough then. And when they were chasing deals and they weren't sure if they were going to get deals, they did not want to pay the hourly rates, the legal freight back then, in case they didn't close on those deals or if they weren't selected to be the buyer. And they said, Andrew, if you went out on your own, we could certainly work with you at a more efficient rate. And so I was introduced to my now partner, Jeff SKLAR. We've been in business together for 11, 12 years. He also a former big law firm refugee. He's a corporate M&A lawyer. I'm a real estate transactional lawyer. The blend was perfect. And now we're close to 40 lawyers of big law firm attorneys, Gibson Dunn, Latham, Loeb and Loeb, Melviny. And the thesis behind the firm is to provide that institutional quality of legal service you'd hope to find at those big firms, but at a much more cost-effective price point. But even more important than price, we pride ourselves on being extremely entrepreneurial and understanding the market that we're transacting in. So for me, for real estate, I'm sitting in Century City and there's probably 10,000 lawyers within a 3-block radius. But what separates us from our competition is that we truly understand the market. We know who the players are. We know who's doing deals. We match capital up with sponsors. And so it's a holistic view as to practicing law, which at a big law firm, it's really, hey, you're in an office, grind out work, and the market right. is really, secondary. And when you're at a boutique firm, you want to provide that white glove concierge level of legal service.
And I find too, with my own company, when you have your name on the door, it takes a different spin on things as opposed to just showing up and I'm a guy at a desk in an office. And then when you're personally talking to clients, you have a vested interest, right? And from what I'm hearing is that you put yourself in the shoes of the client as opposed to just being the guy who shows up and does some work and sends them a bill at the end of the day.
Yeah, look, it's funny because people who know me from law school to my early days as a lawyer say, wow, Andrew, I can't believe you're still a lawyer 25 years later. And, I'm in the real estate business. I'm a lawyer. I love being a lawyer, but I'm also an investor with many of my clients. I probably have invested in 3-4 dozen of clients of mine, some as co-GPs, some as LPs. So I do understand the market. Now, a broker is always going to understand what the cap rates are in this market versus that market. And but we will understand and be able to advise what is market on legal issues and also quasi-business legal issues. So it's just a fun way to and more practical way to be able to provide a legal service when I'm in it as well as an investor.
And the kinds of clients that you and the firm have today, is it range across the board? Is it individuals? Is it investment groups? Is it institutional? Is it large players, and is it one-off guys, or all of the above?
It's really all of the above. So we are uniquely situated where, because of our backgrounds of being in an institutional large law firm, we will get private equity shops and institutions and large family offices who have transacted with larger firms but want now a more boutique entrepreneurial experience. But similarly, because we're not a large firm, we're 40 lawyers, we also get clients who have outgrown their solo practitioner and need a larger firm, a deeper bench. If someone's going on vacation or is sick or is too busy, they still need their deal to move forward, and therefore they need more horsepower than just a 1-2 lawyer shop. So our client base spans the entire scope of the real estate market, capital providers and users of capital.
And from a geographical standpoint, I'm going to guess, you tell me, but the majority of the work is Southern California, or do the clients take you to other places around the country?
So we track this very closely, and for the last several years, the majority of our work are in states outside of California. Now, the majority of our clients are based in Southern California. That's where our network is, but they're transacting everywhere from the Pacific Northwest to the Rocky Mountains to the Sun Belt to the Southeast, all the way up. So, a lot of folks will ask, well, how do you transact in all of these states if you don't have lawyers in all of those states? And I use an example. I said, well, you look at one of the largest firms in the world, like Gibson Dunn. They have offices, 30 offices around the world, but in the United States, they probably cover maybe 8, 9 states, but they're still transacting in states where they don't have offices, yet no one would blink an eye of saying, oh, I'll use Gibson Dunn for a particular deal in a state that they don't have an office in. And the reason is because 90 to 95% of the work can be done by a transactional lawyer, regardless of where they're located. And then what we do is we co-counsel with local counsel for things that are specific, whether it's the mortgage or the deed of trust or anything that's land use related, zoning related. We will co-counsel with them. And our clients who transact throughout the country, they don't want to put the onus on themselves to find that local counsel. They would rather work with us and rely on us as to when to need to get the local counsel.
Yeah, no, you just took part of my pitch on the brokerage when I meet with folks and they say, how do you know the market in Atlanta like you'd know Southern California? And I say, I don't need to know the market in Atlanta. I give the same answer you did, which is if we need local people to understand specifics of the market, we'll do it. But with modern technology and Zoom and other things, I don't need to be there to do it. And we call it single point of contact, right? I mean, that's what it is. You're trusting me. And if I need to trust somebody else, put it on my shoulders and I'll take care of it for you.
Barry, I'm going to use that phrase of single point of contact in my marketing.
Do it. I'm not even going to charge you. That one's free. It's on the house.
Thank you.
So let's dive in a little bit. I want to talk about some of these transactional kinds of things because as a broker and as an investor on our end, I deal with legal issues and transactions and contracts and arguments and discussions and all the above all the time. We could go all day or all week on all the various different things, but I'll start with on the commercial side of things, whether it's a development, whether it's an acquisition of existing product. And I'm guessing in your line of work, you're on both the buyer and the seller side of things. Let's start with on the buy side. What are some of the key things that when you get involved in the transaction, just from a general perspective, that you're really trying to look out for in terms of putting into the deal in place? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff with regards to liability or mitigating damages or exposure and things like that. But what are some of the key things that you keep coming up all the time?
Sure. So as you can imagine, we do a ton of purchase and sale agreements, both buy side and sell side. I would say the vast majority of our deals have a custom PSA. Usually the seller prepares the PSA. And sometimes maybe 15%, 20% most are pre-printed purchase and sale agreements here in California. It could be in AIR form, it can be a CAR form. Let's put those aside. Let's just use your typical 30, 40 page custom PSA. First and foremost, I want my client to get the deal. I want my client to get under contract. I want my client to look good for the broker and the counterparty. But I'm not going to be cavalier and not let legal issues that are material just go by the wayside and not do my job. So it's a delicate balance of not over lawyering, protecting my client, being responsive. I mean, back in 2021, if you didn't turn comments on a PSA within 1 to 2 business days, your client was not getting that.
Right. I mean, speed, time kills deals, period. But in a hot market where there's other buyers who won't look at stuff, who won't make comments, then that's what you're up against, right? You're forced to react quickly, and then you're also your leverage is a bit limited when it's a tight market.
Absolutely. And so the 3 or 4 things that I must have, regardless of market, is 1, protecting the deposit. So some deals may have non-refundable deposit money day one. That was more of a 2021 construct. Today, usually our clients are having a 30-day due diligence period without having to release or without having any money go hard. But any provisions surrounding the deposit, I'm laser focused on that to make sure that that money is protected and the language surrounding its non-refundability is appropriate.
And so
Then,
let's talk about that for a second. I want to dig in
sure.
for a minute because when the market was really hot before it slowed
Yep.
down, I mean, we were buying properties, and I'd put up, normal deposit might be 1 to 3% of the purchase price, and in a larger transaction, maybe it's just a fixed amount that you'd put up as a good faith, but we found that there were buyers putting up ridiculous sums of non-refundable money and just having it go hard right away. And then the seller would take it because they know that they've got a deal, and if they don't, they're just going to keep somebody's money. I find that in today's market, it's more balanced. The transaction volume is lower. There's not this mad panic, and that it is back to a more reasonable sort of setup. With that said, I mean, we just did a deal where we put up a large deposit, and that's what separated us from all the other buyers to make the transaction go forward and have them not start entertaining other offers. I'm just curious what you're seeing in today's market. Is it more back to a balanced state, or is there still some craziness?
Completely agree. I would say 90 to 95% of my deals today have a free look. You put up a deposit, a due diligence period, 21 days, 30 days, if it's a development deal, longer, without any non-refundable money. And you contrast that with 2021, first half of 22, I would say the majority of my deals had non-refundable money, maybe an initial deposit that was non-refundable day one, and then you still have a 30-day due diligence period, and then the second phase of your deposit would then go non-refundable. So you needed to be very protective and very precise as to the language. Other aspects of deposits, some sellers will try and sneak in, even if it's not reflected in the term sheet or the LOI, that the deposit is released to the seller
Correct.
upon the removal of contingencies. I always try and keep it in escrow. You don't want to chase a seller down if after waiving contingencies, there is a default or a failure of a closing condition and a buyer has the right to terminate and get its deposit back, and now you got to chase the seller.
Yeah.
Some buyers are okay with that and they take the business risk.
Yeah, or you do part of it, right? Because part of
Sure.
the thing is, especially with a smaller seller, assuming you're on the buy side, right? The smaller seller needs the money to go tie up his up leg if he's going to go exchange or has other expenses, which might be why he's selling. And so to wet the beak, so to speak, I find helps smooth the wheels along. But at the same time, to give him all the money and then have to go chase him, I think you're right. It's too much.
It is. It is. And now, so in addition to the deposit, the other material provisions that I'm laser focused on are, obviously making sure all the terms in the LOI or term sheet are accurately reflected in the PSA, but some of the more legal issues, reps and warranties, making sure that they're broad enough to really have some effect, right? Some reps are so thin that they're not even meaningful to the buyer. So making sure that they have enough teeth, but beyond having enough teeth is that the survival period is long enough, and usually you're negotiating the basket and caps on liability. So post-closing, if in the event there is a post-closing breach of a seller rep and warranty, that the caps are large enough to be able to compensate the buyer and reimburse them for whatever that breach is. Now, with that said, in my 24, 25 years of practice, I probably can count on my hand how many breach of reps and warranties there have been post-closing, and yet we spend so much time negotiating them. It's sort of ironic.
Yeah. No, I agree. And conversely, from the seller's perspective, you would want as small a cap as possible because you don't want somebody coming back after the fact, chasing you down, asking for some of the money back.
Exactly. Yep.
Do you find that the alternative dispute resolution in these purchase contracts about if there is a dispute of going to arbitration and forcing the hand with that? Are you in favor of that? Is that process longer than arguing about it? I mean, I think there's pluses and minuses to both without getting too deep in the weeds with it.
There are certainly pluses and minuses. Now, I'm a retired litigator, but my law firm does litigation, and I don't think there's anything I hate more than litigation, other as a Dodger fan, other than maybe the Giants. But litigation is hard. Even if you win in litigation, you still lose because of the opportunity cost and the time and the money, and hopefully you get your prevailing party legal fees. But you asked the question as to whether, the arbitration provision, the alternative dispute resolution process is better than just going to Superior Court, pick your jurisdiction, LA, Orange County, what have you. The pluses of arbitration is that it's faster. You're in a nicer conference room in a nice, beautiful office building, and it's a more relaxed setting. You could probably wear like a polo shirt that I'm wearing now, as opposed to being in a government building that's completely inefficient. The judge's hours are very limited, and it's just not a pleasant process, and it will take forever. The con is arbitration is actually a lot more expensive because you are paying for that arbitrator just like you're paying for a lawyer. And secondly, you cannot appeal an arbitration. And so if an arbitrator hands out an order that is just wrong and not consistent with law, which can happen all the time, there is no appeal process opposed to going through the court system. So there really is no good process to settle dispute or to resolve disputes through an adjudicative process. My advice is always try and settle. Yeah. It'll be less costly and less taxing on you emotionally.
And so let's shift gears for a second, because I don't want to get hung up on the negativeness of lawsuits and courtrooms. It gives me the shivers. But on the leasing side, I'm assuming you guys do lease transactions. You have landlord and tenant, the two parties on either side of the transaction. Let's talk about the tenant side for a second. What are some of the key points that you're trying to protect the tenant in from the big bad landlord and the big voluminous lease when you get into talking about the document itself?
Sure. So there's different types of commercial leasing: office leasing, retail leasing, industrial leasing. And if we're representing a tenant, the first thing I want to be mindful of is it single tenant or multi-tenant. If it's single tenant, we have a lot more leverage. If it's multi-tenant, what percentage of the space are we of the entire building? If it's a small percentage, we're probably not going to be able to negotiate much. If it's a larger percentage, one or more floors of an office building, or a lot of square feet of an industrial park or retail center, then we have some leverage. The hot button issues, landlords often have relocation rights, so minimizing those. Their ability to make sure that any tenant improvement allowances are accurately reflected. Are the landlords coming out of pocket, or do the tenants have to come out of pocket and then get reimbursed? The scope of defaults and limiting those to really just material defaults. If you're in a like an office park, retail park, and especially in retail, understanding co-tenancy provisions and use restrictions. I could go on and on.
I find, and those are all good points and relevant. Obviously, I find in today's world, one of the biggest things too is the operating expenses and pass-throughs or triple net charges, because you have inflation. Everything has gone up in price, some within the landlord's control a little bit, and a lot of them just not. I mean, whether it's trash or insurance, taxes always go up, utility charges, wages for, porters and janitorial staff. Everybody's had price increases. And then whether you're in a full service lease or whether you're in a triple net lease, whether you're in a retail setting or an office setting, the landlord has the capacity in some form or fashion to pass these increases back onto the tenant. And in many instances, it could be significant, right? And it really hits the bottom line of the tenant at the end of the day. And so I find that in the transactions we're involved with, when we get the lawyers like yourself involved in it, it's really trying to minimize some of those exposures as best you can. I mean, they are real costs, but at the same time, you just don't want to get hit with a big surprise, and protect yourself however you can.
Absolutely. One of the biggest surprises could be Prop 13 and the property taxes, depending on how long the landlord has owned the building, and if they have a low property tax basis and then sell the building.
You'll be killed, right? I mean, you literally, I don't say literally killed, but we have had tenants who've had their rent double due to no fault of their own, other than the building sold. There's really no way to protect it unless you put language in the lease that gives Prop 13 protection. And as a landlord, you'd never do that.
That's correct, unless if it's a big enough tenant where the tenant has leverage. So, it's an interesting market. The office market is obviously sluggish still, depending on the sub market. I'm sitting in Century City, one of the hottest office markets in the country. It wasn't like that before COVID, but because of the dynamics coming out of COVID, the homelessness issue, crime issue, people not wanting to commute as far as they have been because they got used to working from their homes. Downtown LA has really struggled, and a beneficiary of the office market has been Century City.
No question.
And so tenants have no leverage in Century City, but in downtown LA, if you're going to lease 25,000 square feet and up, you have a ton of leverage.
Yeah, you just got to live there. That's the problem, right? People say that about South Carolina, right? It's very nice, and the cost of living is much less. You just actually have to live there.
I know. Although my wife did go to the real estate office of the place that we were staying, because it really was beautiful despite the heat. So
no question. So in terms of just overall transaction volume and your take on the market as a whole, if we step back, do you find that the volume of transactions, whether it's leasing or whether it's sales, has slowed from the peak of when the market was much hotter? Or is there still a volume of transactions going on that keeps you, I mean, there's always something to keep you busy, but I feel like there's less going on.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's now over 2 years that the transactional market has been sluggish. Now, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, or there are things that I'm seeing that now I don't know if we're ever going to get to a 2021 volume, nor do I think it's healthy to be in a 2021 transactional environment.
And I don't think it's healthy that properties would sell in 5 days with 10 offers on them, right? Now you have properties that sit on the market 60 or 90 days, and I'm going, hey, that used to be the norm.
Right. So what I want is to get back to a pre-COVID level of volume and transactional activity and cap rates. So go back to 2019, right? It was a healthy market, a lot of transactions for that time. Cap rates were in the right place. And so what we're seeing over the last 30, 60, 90 days are more transactions across the board. Now, institutional capital, institutional private equity, for the most part, still on the sidelines.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? I mean, I feel like you just can't get the return. I mean, the cap rate and the interest rate are inverted.
They can't get the return, plus sitting in the preferred equity position where your last dollar is at the 85%, and you have 15% of common equity behind you, and you're able to get equity type returns at a preferred equity place in the cap stack, is very appealing. And so as long as you can get high double-digit returns in the preferred equity market, it's going to be hard for anyone to do a deal that requires common equity. And so most of the deals that we have been doing have been family offices, high net worth individuals, syndications, or funds that have already been formed and they're deploying their capital.
Yeah. And so I'm curious your thoughts, because everybody keeps talking about, we've done other shows where we've had folks on here, oh, interest rates will come down. I think they're going to
Yeah.
come down by the end of the year. I don't see it. And if it does come down, it's not going to be enough to move the needle, at least in the short term. And I think it has to come down enough so that people's perceptions are that tomorrow's market is a better market than today. And I just don't get the sense from anybody that in the short term that's going to happen.
And that's why we're seeing more transactions. So people are putting more, sellers are putting their deals on the market now, because they don't know how the market's going to react in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. Um, will we have a reduction in interest rates? Nobody knows for sure, right? Anybody who says that they know, unless if you're Jerome Powell, you don't know. And I don't even know if he knows. I mean, he really wants to see all the data. What I can tell you, though, in talking to my clients, at least in, let's say, multifamily, who own tens of thousands of units across the country, they don't believe that the Fed has really accurate data or real-time data compared to what they're seeing of rent slowdowns, of rent decreases, no longer increases, or needing to offer more concessions in order to get a tenant, or the quality of tenant has declined for the same unit at the same property over the last couple of years.
Yeah, or ability to pay, or control over your own expenses that you can't control.
Yep. And so there is just this malaise over the commercial real estate industry that it's different than when I started my firm coming out of the GFC, where lenders were selling tapes of loans, portfolio of product just to clear it out. There was a lot of transactions that were at significant discounts. People needed to raise capital. Lenders needed to raise capital. Here over the last 2 years, we've just been in pause mode. We haven't seen the ultra distress that we thought we were going to see, other than in office, where my clients have bought loans secured by office at significant discounts.
But then you have to deal with the cleanup, and you have to hope that you can get back to some stabilization sooner rather than later, because there's no light at the end of the tunnel, especially for places like downtown LA.
Correct.
Yeah. So Paul's waving at me that he wants to go to breakfast and get some coffee, and we are almost out of time. It always goes quick, and we could go all day. I guess one final thought from you in terms of just the general economy between now and the end of the year. I know it's a short window and we have an election coming up. Do you think it's more of the same? Does it get better? Does it get worse? And if so, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, wow, there's a lot. So, Paul, hold off on that breakfast. Well, first of all, what keeps me up at night, for some reason, my 9-year-old came into our room at 3:30 in the morning this past morning, and so started a little later than I wanted to. I'm optimistic. I feel that based on the uptick in transactional volume during the summer, which is usually a slow time in the market, tells me that we are going to have an active fall and winter despite the election. I know everyone was concerned, oh, we have an election, no one's going to do deals. I'm seeing more deals over the last 30, 60, 90 days, and we're 100 days away from the election. My crystal ball, which I don't know if it's worth anything, tells me that by the end of this year, more companies are going to need to transact because they've been on the sidelines for too long, and they're going to need to get going. They're going to need to put money to work. They've raised these funds. Investors are getting antsy. Sellers are going to need to sell. They don't want to have to deal with another rate cap in 25 or a loan maturity in 25. And if they don't sell now, they fear that maybe their asset value could go down in price. So I'm just optimistic that at least we're going to see more deal volume.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing from you is there'll be deals of people who need to make deals. The question will be, is there going to be some fervor about, hey, I should do it now rather than later? And I guess that one just remains to be seen. We'll just have to see how it plays out. So, But and Andrew, if people want to find out more information about you or your firm, what's the website where they can go to get more info?
Absolutely. It's sklarkirsch.com. That's SKLAR. And my last name, KIRSH.com. Barry, I truly appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing your thoughts with us, and much continued success to you and your son Maverick and Tom Cruise. Maybe he'll do some more movies, keep us all entertained, and your firm, and I appreciate you coming on the show today. I am Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company. Thanks to everybody else for tuning in, listening in, wherever you are. Have a good day. Hopefully we gave you something to think about. We'll see you back here next week on Let's Talk Real Estate.
Well, there you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.